Jorge Masvidal just dropped one of the most brutal predictions you will hear about Conor McGregor's comeback fight. And it has nothing to do with skill, nothing to do with power, nothing to do with the left hand. It has to do with how McGregor has been living for the last 5 years. And Masvidal's exact words were, "He gets cooked, smoked like a brisket." Let's start with the assessment that is going to define this entire episode, because Masvidal built an argument that nobody else has framed quite this way. He said the question is not whether the social media chaos, the public controversies, the drunk Twitter rants are real or fabricated marketing. He said if it has all been a performance, if McGregor has been quietly disciplined behind closed doors this entire time, then McGregor is one of the greatest marketers this sport has ever produced. But if it is real, if that is actually how he has been living, Masvidal does not give him a chance against Max Holloway. None. And here is why that distinction matters so much to him. Because Max Holloway has lived a completely different 5 years. Masvidal pointed out that Holloway has only fought the best available opposition in this division for the entire stretch that McGregor has been away. Gaethje, Topuria, Charles Oliveira. Every single one of those fights came with a full training camp, full medical clearance, full competitive preparation. Whether Holloway won or lost any individual fight is almost beside the point in Masvidal's framing. The point is that Holloway has been doing the work continuously, while McGregor, in Masvidal's blunt assessment, has been at home watching other people fight, catching legal charges, not training. Conventional wisdom, Masvidal said, tells him McGregor walks into this fight after 6 to 10 weeks of camp against a man who has been operating at championship level without interruption, and the result is not competitive. Easy work for Holloway, in his words. They tear him a new one. That is one of the harshest assessments anyone has given this fight. But Masvidal did not start the episode talking about McGregor. He started talking about Ilia Topuria, and what he said completely reframes the injury conversation that has dominated the news cycle since UFC Freedom 250. Masvidal said something that stopped him mid-sentence on his own show. He said Topuria has dense bones, because he genuinely thought what he saw on fight night looked broken, and the update suggests it might heal faster than anyone initially expected. If the non-surgical recovery path holds, Topuria avoids the standard 6-week shutdown period that comes with surgical intervention. He can still do cardio. He can probably get back to pad work soon. Hit the bag. Jump rope. Masvidal drew a clear line, though, no contact. Not even light drilling. Not yet. And then he made the point that nobody else in this conversation has made as directly. He said he would not rush Topuria back this year under any circumstances. Not because Topuria lacks the heart or the competitive drive. Masvidal was explicit that he knows Topuria personally and considers him an elite-level competitor with a dog mentality that few fighters possess. But Masvidal raised the question that haunts every analyst who has watched a young superstar take this kind of damage. How does a fighter come back after a fight like that? You never really know until you see it. He referenced Anderson Silva's leg break as the cautionary example, a reminder that some fighters simply never return to who they were before a specific kind of trauma. But Masvidal's read on Topuria specifically is more optimistic than that comparison suggests. He said if there is one fighter capable of making a full comeback and competing for a world title again, it is Topuria. He believes Topuria figures it out, gets his mind right, returns and puts together another dominant run. The timeline Masvidal proposed is the first quarter of next year, not because Topuria's body necessarily needs that long, but because Topuria is young enough that there is no reason to rush him. 27 years old. He has time. And Masvidal raised a detail that matters more than most people realize. Even with bones intact, the swelling, the trauma to the brain from the volume of clean shots Topuria absorbed, that needs to fully resolve before he steps back into a training camp, because a training camp itself is more trauma. More contact. More risk on a system that has not finished healing. Now to the fight that just happened and the fighter who just became the most powerful man in the lightweight division. Justin Gaethje. Masvidal does not want to see Gaethje fight Paddy Pimblett again. He was direct about that, and he was careful to note it is not a disrespect to Pimblett's skill or his position in the rankings. It is about what makes the most commercial and competitive sense given where Gaethje sits right now, pound for pound near the top of the sport, holding the undisputed belt, coming off the single most significant win of his career. Masvidal's preferred outcome is specific. He wants Pimblett to beat the next man on his schedule, then face Topuria in England or Spain, calling that matchup the biggest fight the lightweight division can produce outside of Gaethje himself. And the winner of that fight, carrying the momentum and the army of support that comes with it, becomes the opponent that actually makes sense for Gaethje next. Masvidal predicted Gaethje will see the logic in that pathway too, for one very direct reason. Money. He said the checkbook that is about to land in front of Gaethje after a performance like that is going to be substantial enough that retirement talk becomes very difficult to follow through on. Masvidal has direct knowledge of Gaethje's management situation and expressed confidence that his team will negotiate the kind of deal that keeps him competing rather than walking away. But Masvidal also floated the fight that would generate more raw viewership than almost anything else available, a rematch with Topuria. He cited the number directly. 34 million people watched UFC Freedom 250. And his argument is that every single person who watched that fight is going to tell someone else to watch the rematch. Mother, sister, girlfriend, best friend. He projected that number could climb to 60 million for a rematch, purely on the strength of how good the first fight was and how much unfinished business it left behind. Whether Topuria has technically earned that immediate rematch is, in Masvidal's words, not his call to make. That decision belongs to the company. He also weighed in on Charles Oliveira's case for the next Gaethje fight, and it might be the most compelling argument in the entire conversation. Oliveira currently holds the BMF title after his win over Holloway. He also has a prior victory over Gaethje from several years back. Masvidal pointed out that an Oliveira fight gives Gaethje 3 storylines in a single fight, defending his lightweight title, picking up the BMF belt he lost to Holloway, and avenging the one loss on his record that still sits unresolved. That is, in Masvidal's words, almost a 3-for-1. He called Oliveira one of the most deserving contenders in the entire division specifically because of that unfinished business. Masvidal closed the episode with a broader look across the sport, including a prediction on Ian Machado Gary against Islam Makhachev that deserves attention on its own. He believes the first 2 or 3 rounds will be genuinely difficult for Makhachev, citing Gary's elite footwork, his frame that plays bigger than the weight class suggests, and his significantly improved wrestling defense, particularly against the cage. But Masvidal still favors Makhachev to find a way to impose his will as the fight extends, to wear Gary down physically and eventually find a comfortable position on the ground where his pressure becomes decisive. So here is where this leaves the entire division heading into the back half of the year. Gaethje sitting on top with leverage and options. Topuria facing a recovery timeline that Masvidal believes should not be rushed regardless of how fast the bones heal. McGregor walking into the most scrutinized comeback fight of his career carrying questions about his lifestyle that Masvidal addressed more directly than almost anyone else in the sport has been willing to. And Holloway sitting across from him with 5 uninterrupted years of elite competition behind him. Masvidal made his read clear. If the version of McGregor we have seen publicly over the last several years is the real version, not a character, not a marketing performance, he does not give him a chance. Easy work for Holloway. Smoked like a brisket. Those are not the words of someone hedging. Those are the words of someone who has watched this sport long enough to know exactly what 5 years of inactivity combined with a chaotic personal life usually produces when it meets a fighter who has done nothing but compete at the highest level the entire time. Whether Masvidal is right is going to be answered on July 11th. But the case he built, about lifestyle, about preparation, about what 5 years actually means depending on how you spend them, is one of the more uncomfortable and more honest assessments this fight has gotten from anyone inside the sport.